Let's go. Oh man. This is episode 499, Soul Not For Sale podcast. And I've seen a lot of people in the comments at certain points where I have these Joe Rogan clips and they're like, oh, Joe Rogan has to know about BlackRock. Why isn't he saying this? Why isn't he saying that? Well, in this podcast, it's Patrick Bet David. If you don't know about Patrick Bet David, I've been talking about him for a while. He has a great podcast. It's called the Patrick Bet David podcast. And he just straight up confronts Joe about what he knows about BlackRock and Vanguard. And then he goes into a whole rant about what they're doing. Joe doesn't speak much in this rant, but he asks them. Like, nobody ever says, hey, what do you know about? I'm just going to get right to it. This is a very interesting episode. And what he touches on that really stands out is who is the real commander-in-chief of the USA? Very interesting question. Before I do that, though, let's just go to the store. This is IamCoachColin.com. You guys know about this site. This is the greatest anti-establishment clothing brand known to man. This is our newest design. Public enemy number one, the cricket connoisseur himself. You can grab that at IamCoachColin.com. We also have the certified Pure Blood shirt. This is for those of you who survived the experiment over the past 4 years. Get your certificate of achievement by getting this shirt and stay unjabbed and proud. We also have the Great Resist shirts. You heard about the Great Reset? Well, join the Great Resist instead. No need to eat crickets when there's all these delicious cows roaming the farmland. Forget about crickets. They got parasites anyways. Look into that, I'm telling you. And the Soul Not For Sale, the original, the one that started it all. This is my baby right here. You can get all of that and more at IamCoachColin.com. And I was showing you the t-shirts, but there's t-shirts for men and women, tank tops for men and women, and hoodies. Boom, like the one I got on right now. So you can get all of that. And if you want 10% off, you're thinking of buying something, 10% off right now. No email needed, nothing, none of that stuff. Put in the discount code area, I am Coach Colin. That gets you 10% off. It's all one word. All capital letters, one L in the name Colin, and that gets you 10% off. You're very welcome. And if you've done this already on our site, thank you. You are much appreciated. Now let's get into this clip. It's a doozy.
Joe, have you looked at, Larry Fink, Soros, State Street, Vanguard, BlackRock? How much have you looked at what they're doing and what their ties are?
I've looked at it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
They're pretty much running everything.
Yeah.
S&P 500, the number that 88% of the companies on S&P 500, 88% of them, the largest shareholder of those companies is either State Street, BlackRock, or Vanguard. 88% of them, okay? And then you see their influence in defense contracts. Okay, so we went through a deal. I'm like, let me see if these guys, this ESG, Larry Fink, Vanguard, State Street, if they have any influence on military contract, defense contracts. If you Google the largest shareholder for Raytheon, 3 out of the 4 top shareholders of Raytheon, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. It could be top 3 with Raytheon, but I think it's 3 out of 4. If you go look up General Dynamics, if you go look up Boeing, if you go look up, Northrop Grumman, okay? And then you work backwards and you say, okay, how much money is that in what these guys are doing? You'll find the amount of money we spent in our military, $744 billion on how much we're making from defense, but you'll see some numbers saying last year it's 13% of our GDP, which is around $850 billion. That's more than the next 10 combined. We gave more money to Ukraine than Russia spent on their military last year. And when you look at these contracts, then you're like, okay, Fink is there. These guys are there. Okay, let's go look at Hollywood. Same thing you see there. Let's go look at pharmaceutical. Let's go look at this. And you're like, wait a minute. These guys essentially have a monopoly. Well, how big is BlackRock? $10 trillion. How big is $10 trillion? Only 2 countries have a bigger GDP than what BlackRock has, assets under management, U.S. and China. That's how big BlackRock is. So then they went and they started getting all these other guys to sign on and say, hey, we want you to participate with the same thing as well with ESG. And they ended up having, I think they had 31 signers. I think end of 2022, they got 60 something signers for a total of $70 trillion of assets under management that they're controlling. So now they're controlling other places. And just recently, if you saw the rebuilding of Ukraine, did you see this contract? Rebuilding of Ukraine, $400 billion contract. BlackRock and Chase is helping rebuild Ukraine. And then, okay, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but what the hell is going on here? They have that much control to get everybody to do what they want them to do? Yes. So Dylan Mulvaney, who cares? Why? Bud Light. How does that tie up? You got the DEI, the HRC, the human rights, and all this stuff. And then you go even deeper, which is even the crazier part with, the education, schools. Like, the biggest union we have in America, I think it's National Education something. NEA is the largest union we have. 3 million teachers are part of that union. And you look at that and you go deeper in that with open society and who's funding it, who's the money behind these organizations. Comes back, Soros. How do you feel about the kind of power they have right now to fight against them? Because this isn't like a billionaire can come out and say, I'm going to go up against these guys. They don't have a little bit of money. A billionaire to these guys is nothing. They got the kind of control that can make companies fire boards. They can replace CEOs. They can replace leaders if they don't like. They have their hands so much into it where many times when people say the people of power, I'm kind of like, who are the people of power? Are you convinced these guys are really running the world? Or what do you think about what some of these bigger companies are doing, like State Street, Vanguard, and BlackRock?
Well, they certainly have massive amounts of influence. What do you think they're doing?
The question is, how do you fight it? Like, for example, the way we fight mainstream is by...
I gotta say, Joe just threw that right back to him. He's like, I'm not touching this at all. You can talk about it on my show, no problem. But here you go. You take that right back on to yourself. Oh, man. Very interesting. Very interesting. Obviously, Joe can't say anything because there's going to be 100 articles written about him. But if Patrick says anything, they're not going to say much about it. It's a tricky situation to be in. I definitely understand it.
What? The show that we do. And we have to be patient. It's going to take 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 years. Now you have some influence, right? Okay, we can fight. There is an actual strategy on how to fight that. No problem. You got a kid in school who's a bully. He's bigger than you. He keeps bullying you. You have a strategy on how to beat the guy. You take a year, jiu-jitsu 2 years, this, that. Boom. One fight, he knows, I'm never going to touch Joe again. Screw this thing. I'm not doing this no more, right? There is a play to it. When you have this much, Joe, 88% of S&P 500 companies, that is a form of a monopoly. If I'm a president, whether it's a Trump or whoever else goes out there and does it, our monopoly law in America is 50%. They say 50%. Like if you tie and said, at what point is it 50%? I've done calls with the FTC. Like we had one of our guys' technology we were using. The FTC called and said, hey, we want to have a call with you because they're thinking about buying this other technology company and we're worried it's going to be a monopoly. So we had the call, okay? At the end of the call with us, with a bunch of different people, we said, we love their product, we love their product. That deal didn't end up happening, okay? The monopoly law. Some of these guys are influencing it. But they say 50% is a monopoly law. Do you know how many people in America have an iPhone versus Droid? Do you know what the numbers, market shares in America with iPhones?
I think it's like 60.
58%, 60%. Yeah. That is already a monopoly. But who's knocking on the door of Apple? Tim Cook saying, hey, Tim, you got 58%. That's breaking a monopoly law. Nobody is. I think someone's got to break apart. In 1993, I don't know which senator it was, these guys that were trying to get the defense contractors to be better at the pricing, what they were charging, because they were overcharging DOD, and DOD people don't know what the hell is going on. They're like, yeah, okay, how much? $68 million do it, $1.2 billion do it. I'm not going to over-negotiate the money. They took 51 defense companies, and they brought it down to only 5. It's only 5 companies right now when you want to buy anything. Think about that. So defense contractors is 5. We know how these guys make money. Earlier, I was asking you a question, why do you think vaccine? And you're like, Pat, that's how they make their money, right? I mean, if you and I run a hotel, rooms are empty, we're not making money. We need people to stay in the rooms. If you and I are running a hospital, we need people on the beds to make money.
Yeah.
If there's no people on the beds, we ain't making money. If these 5 contractors are fighting for $744 billion, what do they want more of? Wars. They want more people dying. You know the Papa John's saying, better ingredients, better pizza, Papa John's. Mm-hmm. These guys is more wars, more people dying, more profits, defense contractors, right? That's a valid concern that I have. Because behind closed doors, this whole military-industrial complex, when you look at the numbers, whoever becomes the president, unfortunately, this guy's an anti-establishment president, good. Unfortunately, if you're an anti-establishment president, everyone's going to come after you, especially these military defense contractors. So if a president got up and said, if I'm going to be the president, here's what we're going to be doing. We have to look at all the contracts. You can't overcharge us. We have to open it up. You have to sell some of your companies. You have to let them be independent again. You have to do this. You have to let them go public, separate, whatever way you got to break them apart to have competition again, because we don't have that today. So that is a major concern where we say we have a commander-in-chief, but really the commander-in-chief is Larry Fink today.
Oh, man. This guy, holy. Like I said, it's called the Patrick Bet David podcast. They explore a lot of this stuff. And the reason Patrick Bet David is so well versed in all of this stuff, just so you know, if you don't know him, a little background, he's a businessman as well. He's erected some really big companies. He sold a company for somewhere in, I believe it was like $200 million, maybe $250 million. His net worth is probably $500 million, I would think. So he is rich. He is elite, most definitely. And even though he has enough money to walk away and just chill, he decided to start a media company, and he's decided to pursue truth and really analyze things like what he's doing right now. Solid guy. He's the guy who actually offered Tucker Carlson $100 million to come onto his company and actually have a seat on the board. And yeah, absolutely nuts. But that's something we never think of. Larry Fink actually being the commander-in-chief. And then it makes me think Trump actually hired him for a position in Trump's cabinet. And, at the same time, I understand it as Trump. If you're Trump and him are businessmen. They understand the world through the eyes of business, through the eyes of buying things. It's not buying things, selling things, making businesses, making money. So it's you look at it and you go, who should I hire in my cabinet? Well, if America's a huge business, well, I'm just going to hire this guy because he's incredible at business. And he has all this control already. So now if he's in my cabinet, I have access to that same control. Tucker Carlson was talking to Hunter Biden's ex-business partner. And the one thing that this person said, Devin Archer, he was we're selling access. In Washington, that's what you do. It's not a money-making place. It's a place where you sell your access. And that's what a lot of politicians do, right? They sell access. That's how it works. So that relationship benefited Larry Fink, but even more so, that relationship benefited Trump. And then Patrick Bet David taking that stretch and saying that that's the real commander-in-chief. It's man, he's not wrong. He's not wrong. Wow. Very interesting. Very interesting. Super interesting podcast. Patrick Bet David does not hold back. He was one of the first people to talk about ESGs and to talk about how that actually impacts everything that we see in terms of business, because his company is subject to that type of thing. And you have to decide whether or not you want to walk the line that they want you to walk or you want to push against it. And with his companies, he's decided to push against it. So his ESG score is actually probably pretty low. And that's the hit that you take when you want to, not be a part of that whole thing. Very, very interesting podcast. This is episode 2016. I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed. It's more than 2 hours, but it'll fly by. And yeah, Commander-in-Chief. What do you guys think? What do you think about that? That's something that I've never said. I've never heard anyone say, But as soon as it was said, it makes perfect sense. Does that make sense to you? That somebody who's running $10 trillion, $10 trillion, because that's what BlackRock is. That's what it's worth, 10 trillion. So it's like there's only two countries, I'm not sure if he said it, but there's only two countries with a bigger GDP, and that's the United States and China. So BlackRock's pretty big. It has the third biggest GDP in the world, if you want to look at it that way, But it has the advantage of not being stationed just in America, not just being China. It's stationed all over the world. Wow. And you know what it really makes me think of? If you've been somebody who's been watching my channel, you saw that I covered James O'Keefe and how he got a BlackRock recruiter to kind of out himself and talk about certain things that he shouldn't have talked about. I wonder where that guy is now. Now that I just got confronted with how powerful Larry Fink is, because, you know how powerful he is. I've covered him before. He's high up in the World Economic Forum. I'm sure he's in the Bilderberg Group and all sorts of meetings that happen behind closed doors that we don't know about. But when you put it that way, that he's the commander-in-chief, hits completely different. Let me know what you think. Like the video. Boost us out of the shadow realm. We can't exist in the shadow realm forever. We have to see the sunlight eventually. We will not stay in these low numbers of subscribers and likes. And views. We will get boosted out soon enough. I know it's coming. But with your help, it could come even faster. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Like that video. And other than that, I am out. Episode 499. Let's go.